all I wanted. All I wanted to do was a simple talk show. Maybe a guest here in the studio, nobody there right now, somebody on Skype. I didn't want to become a news department, a one-man news department, doing all kinds of reporting from the field and a lot of editing and complex stuff to get a program ready. And here I am. From the studio, in the bonus room, above the garage, on the north side of Cary, at the foot of Mount Belzoni, and the Legislative Building in downtown Raleigh, this is the Triangle Talk Show. It is episode 57. We're going to be still sticking around some politics. April 17th, 2019. Edge case of an edge case. What do I mean by that? Well, this week the North Carolina House and Senate both passed their versions of this, well, same version, their bill, House Bill 357 or 359, House Bill 602, Senate Bill 359. The Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. This is something that's been going around the country. Anti-abortion activists have been getting these bills introduced in basically Republican-controlled states, conservative-friendly states. North Carolina is one of those right now. And the idea, the very basic idea of the bill, it actually doesn't sound that bad on first blush. It has a patina of respectability. If a abortion attempt ends up with a live child, you don't kill it. You protect it. You give it health care. Try to keep it alive, keep it going. The reason I call this an edge case of an edge case is it never happens. I mean, it happens, but it's really rare. These are late-term abortions. Late-term abortions are a very small percentage of the number of abortions that actually occur. And to have a fetus be viable, be alive, be viable, be resuscitatable, have the potential for a future life is really, really rare. No one really knows how often that happens, as you will hear in this program. No one knows how often it happens. But that hasn't stopped anti-abortion activists from getting these bills entered, and in this case in North Carolina, passed by the legislature. It's going to the governor for maybe a veto, maybe we'll see. So it just doesn't happen much. What's the purpose of doing it? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to say, because there'll be people on the program who will say. What we're going to do is we're going to go downtown. We're going to go to downtown Raleigh. Have you ever been to the state legislature? Have you ever seen anything go on there? Well, here's downtown on Google Maps. A very cool 3D Google Maps, and we slide around a little bit north of downtown and try not to get lost. There it is, the legislative building. And I've been there a few times. I'd never actually seen the legislature in action until this week. And I went down there and saw it twice. Senate on Monday and the House on Tuesday, as they were debating these versions of the bill. And I just went down there on Monday and watched. And on Tuesday, I hauled the camera down and recorded stuff. That was interesting. I didn't know what I would be allowed to do, so I did a little bit of research. I tried calling the, oh, by the way, I'm your antique activist wannabe. I'm Gary Pierce. It's my show. Come on, bug. There's the bug. I'd never been down there. I'd never seen the legislature in action. I've been in the building a few times, but I've never seen the legislature in action. And so I didn't really know what to expect, and I didn't know whether I'd be able to bring my video camera, stuff like that. So on Monday, I just watched the debate from the gallery. And on Tuesday, I took the camera down, but first I called. I tried to call a general information number. Nobody ever answered. I called the sergeant at arms, the guys, the people that basically maintain order and discipline in the House and Senate chambers. And the guy answered right away. And I said, I looked up the basic instructions for visitors, for what you can do and what you shouldn't do. And it said photography was okay from the gallery. No flashes, but you can take pictures. So I called him up and I said, I understand that photography is okay, but what about with the tripod? And he said, well, you could do that. You have to do it from the center of the gallery, not from the sides. And I said, what about video? And he said, I think that's okay. All right. So video on a tripod as long as I'm in the middle. Yeah, that should be okay. It was a really informal conversation. And I've had this kind of conversation with other government agencies in North Carolina, an insurance department, things like that. I want to find out about something, Department of Revenue, I think. And you get somebody on the phone and kind of expecting very stuffy official responses and information. And you just get a guy or a woman that, yeah, I think that's okay. It's almost like they're really not sure. So I did that. I was going to show you some pictures of doing that. Let me see if I can get to that real quick. Oh, meantime, right outside the house, it's spring. Okay? It's spring outside the house. Okay, back. Come on. Trying to make the machinery behave. Okay, so this is what I did. For those of you that are watching, there's the video camera on the tripod pointing down at the house. And there's a side angle view. You can see that I'm in the gallery. The rest of the gallery, the edges are around the back there. So I'm in the middle on the tripod with the video camera pointed down there. Another kind of an angle shot to see what that looked like. And looked like it was going to be okay. And so I did shoot the debate in the House on this issue, which is pretty cool. So again, I went down there on Monday. I was going to talk about the building. So there's the building, and let's get a little bit more on top of it. The Senate is over on the right-hand side. The House chamber is on the left-hand side. Up in front, just kind of the big stairway. If you've ever been there, the big red velvet stairway. And in the back, I think some kind of meeting rooms and stuff. And you can go there. Anybody can go there, wander around. They do have security now. Starting at the beginning of the year, they put in I think it's a single metal detector, like you would see at the airport at TSA, but just one. When I went Monday and Tuesday, it wasn't very busy. There wasn't anybody in line. When things are really busy, I can see that thing getting pretty jammed up. But no problem when I went there. Okay, so got to make that go away. See, one of the problems I've got here is I'm the technical director of the show, as well as the host. It's just me. So went Monday with a group of pro-choice activists, and we were waiting in the lobby outside the Senate chamber at that time. And I could see a TV camera on the other side getting set up. It looks like they were doing a live shot. And it turns out it was WRAL. And I got a text from Cindy, my wife, who said, "You're on TV. You're on WRAL." And wrong. There we go. Right to camera. There's the shot that WRAL had. And there's us in the background. And that is me. And it's Laura Leslie is the reporter there. So over here on the right, that's the edge of the Senate chamber. And we're just hanging out there waiting. I think she was on the 6 o'clock news, and the session was going to start at 7. And a bunch of anti-abortion activists showed up as well. So what have I got next? A little bit of background of what things look like inside the House chamber, and now I've got some actual video to show you. And I apologize as usual to the folks in the audio audience. This is a fairly visual thing. I'll try to do some describing of what's going on, but you might want to get over to YouTube, see the pictures. So let's see if we can make this go. That's the gallery on the left. We're in the House chamber now. This is from Tuesday. The gallery on the right, and then the well where all the representatives are down there on the bottom. And this is what the representatives' desks look like. Not very spacious. Somebody's working at his, don't know who that is, working at a laptop. Most of them have laptops. There's a couple of empty desks. You can see the microphone. Each representative has a microphone. So when it's their turn to talk, they can just grab that, pull it up, and get on the PA system. And I think I got something to say about the PA system in a moment. Because here's the session getting started. And if you're in the gallery, it sounds like that. It's real hard to hear. Just kind of booming. It's because there's one big speaker. There's a big speaker that's sitting over the well, over the whole building, and that's it. And it's just kind of echoing and reverbing and booming. You can barely hear. I was hoping for a feed of audio. Media typically can get a feed of audio from a breakout box, and the video here is showing the breakout box. It was right in front of me. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 professional audio connectors. And I plugged into it and turned around and was snaking my cord back up to the camera. And the sergeant at arms came up to me and said, "I think you got a problem here." The box pulled right off the wall. It was just hanging by a wire. So I pushed it back on the wall and plugged back into it, and it wasn't working. I wasn't getting any sound from it. Fortunately, I didn't need it. What I recorded was this kind of echoey garble that you hear in the background, but the House has a system of online audio. Well, the House and the Senate, and you can get live audio that's playing, streaming in real time. At least I think you can. I didn't get a chance to actually play with this, but it looks like you can just go down there and play and stream the audio. Probably there's going to be a little delay, a little bit of latency, a second or so. But you could, if you bring your phone, your earbuds, and you can listen to what's going on in both the House chamber and in the Senate chamber. Same thing. And some conference rooms. And there's a press conference room. And as I was getting this stuff set up, I thought, well, let's go see if anybody's happens to be in the press room. and there wasn't, but it sounded like the microphone was open, and I'm hearing the air handling system in the background, and a little bit of clunking. Yeah, nothing on the schedule, but it sounds like they leave the microphone open. I might go listen sometime, see if I can catch some reporters talking in the background. So that's fine if you want to hear something live, but they've also got archives of all the sessions. Now, there's no video yet. They're working on video. I've read that they're working on getting a video set up. So like many areas, like many states, and like the U.S. House and Senate, you get...
Testing in the House Chamber, Legislative Day 45.
You can get video, but that's just the audio, and there's the archive. And the archive is what I pulled up.
85 having voted affirmative and 27 having voted in the negative. House Bill 350 passes second reading. Handle that objection.
Now, what I'm looking at now is what I call the scoreboard. It's on the side of the of both sides of the well, and they are voting on a few other measures now. In fact, what they were just voting on was House Bill 350, and this is interesting. It's a bill entitled, excuse me, an act to designate the time zone of North Carolina and adopt daylight saving time year-round if authorized by Congress. So we just went through another time change, last month from standard time to daylight saving. I'm gonna be incorrect and call it's a protest, daylight savings time. I'm one of those people that knows that technically it's called daylight saving time. And I would be happy to go around correcting people who called it daylight savings time and say, no, you're saying it wrong. It's daylight saving time. But because I really want to see full-time daylight saving time, and that's been so hard to get to, that as a protest, I'm just going to from now on call it daylight savings time, just to make everybody else mad. We went through it. Every time we go through it, there's talk about we really should make it full-time because it makes a lot of sense. We're not farmers anymore for the most part. We don't need the early morning light as much as we could use the evening light. There's a lot of other stories and fun things to talk about. That extra hour of daylight is going to burn up the crops. Of course, there's no extra hour of daylight. It just moves from one part of the day to the other. So there's always talk about it. Every time we make the change, there's talk about how it causes accidents and strokes and heart attacks, and the human cost is fairly high. Most of us just pay for it with kind of feeling sleepy for a couple of days. I'm always sleepy. But nothing ever goes anywhere. Well, this year, in a lot of states, there seems to be something going somewhere. And I learned that any state can decide on their own, without any further authorization, to stay on standard time. You can just do it. The state can do it of its own accord. But we don't want to do that. We want to go on daylight savings time. You can't do that of your own accord. It has to be approved by some arm of the federal government. So that's why this says we want to go year-round if it's authorized by Congress. And a lot of states are now lobbying Congress to make that possible. I didn't record the debate on this bill. It did pass. It passed the House, was going on to the Senate. I didn't record the debate. The only objection was from someone talking about students whose school buses tend to be pretty early in the morning, and in the middle of winter, the darkest morning of winter, if we stayed on daylight savings time all winter. It wouldn't get light until like 8:30, 9 o'clock. Students would be in school. They'd be in the dark at their bus stops and in the dark in school for a long time. Earliest schools classes tend to start 7:30 or so. So that's the primary reason not to do it, and it's valid enough, but there's lots of other reasons to do it, and most people I've heard from and the majority, a good solid majority in the legislature said, it's a good idea, so let's do it. So there they are on that act. If it ever gets approved by Congress. Kind of hoping so. Hoping so this year. Only one more change, or no more changes, because we're on it now. So in this session, they were doing a second read and then a third read right after the second read. The second read would get the scoreboard, and the second read would be a voice vote afterwards. And we've heard a lot about how contentious things are, how little bipartisanship there is, and most of the votes, I think it took about 6 votes before they got to the main event, the Keep 'Em Alive bill. Most of those votes were like this, if they weren't unanimous. They were fairly unanimous and very bipartisan because the bills were fairly non-controversial, like the daylight saving time. I didn't make notes on all of the different bills, but to tell you what they were. But just to make the point that there's a lot of these that are not controversial and are bipartisan, and they go by quickly. What else have I got here?
Question for the House. The passage of House Bill 495 on third reading. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 495 having passed third reading. Order sentence and clerk will machine record the vote.
So those devices are on both sides of the well, and on both sides there was a chandelier in the way, so I couldn't see the whole thing. Okay, so I think it's time to go actually look at the. Stop it. Yeah, time to go actually look at the debate in the House on House Bill 602, Senate Bill 359, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. And once again, for those of you, and you'll hear the good audio that I copied and synced in, so we won't have to hear that boomy audio anymore. For those of you that are watching, you'll notice that I pulled up a fair amount of background information that I laid over the picture. Some of it refutes the things that some of the representatives are saying. Some of it supports it, and some of it is just text material that goes along with what people are talking about. I don't think I'm going to be able to interrupt and help those of you in the audio audience with what's going on. So, yeah, the Triangle Talk Show is an audio podcast, except this time. Apparently it's video. So let's head to the House. This is just from yesterday. Pretty much on the ball here. If we were a TV station with vast resources, this would have been up last night. But I worked on it for a while last night and all day today. I don't want to do this. I just want that little talk show. I'll do it once in a while. Okay, let's head for the debate.
Representative Floyd, gentleman would like to record on this. Clerk will lock machine, record the vote. 111 having voted in the affirmative and none the negative. House Bill 531 passes second reading.
Okay, that's the previous.
Objection. Be read a third time.
Previous vote that they were taking on a different bill.
531 on third reading. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no.
And here we go.
House Bill 531 having passed third reading will be sent to the Senate. Senate Bill 359. The clerk will read.
Senators Howard, Heiss, and Harrington. Senate Bill 359, a bill to be entitled an act establishing the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. General Assembly of the North Carolina Act.
Lady from Carteret, Representative McElrath is recognized to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Senate Bill 359 is about making it clear in statute that a baby born alive after a botched abortion with its heart beating and breathing will get the same standard of care as a baby with the same gestational age that's born naturally. You'll hear, as I have in debate in the House Health Committee and on the Senate floor from the opponents, that this is just another unneeded bill to get between a woman and her doctor. That is false. This bill has nothing to do with a woman's decision to abort her baby, nor does it have anything to do with the abortion procedure itself. This is about the baby that's born alive when the abortion fails to kill the baby. You will also hear from those against the bill that this bill is not written by doctors. And as you all know, the bills we pass here are written by lawyers. And the only doctor in this House has stood up for this bill. Its companion, House 602, in the Health Committee. He has spoke for this bill. You will hear from opponents of 359, Senate Bill 359, that there's no need for this bill. We don't have this happening in North Carolina. I can attest to the fact that infanticide has happened in North Carolina. I've been witness to the results of those late-term abortions. When I was doing my practical in the lab in Onslow Memorial Hospital in Jacksonville, North Carolina, in the 70s, I witnessed the results of these late-term abortions. There was an abortionist in Jacksonville, North Carolina, who is known nationally for performing late-term abortions. We heard of many girls who came from other states to North Carolina, Jacksonville, North Carolina, to have their late-term abortions. Even hitchhiking down from New York, some of them did, to come to Jacksonville, North Carolina, to have their late-term abortions. It's sad to know that in the 70s and 80s, Jacksonville, North Carolina, the home of the Marine Corps, my special Marine Corps, was known as the late-term abortion city. Those were the days when saline abortions were performed. The salt content in the saline was so strong that it burned the little baby's skin. Some lived through this horrendous procedure, and the hospital staff did everything they could to save them. We drew blood gases on them. We did everything we could in the lab to do our part to save these babies. Nurses told of stories of the babies that were born alive, been taken by the doctor and turned over with their faces down in the saline to drown them. Most of the nurses refused to work with this abortionist. He only did his abortions on the weekend. One day I was on a break, went in to visit with the pathologist in the pathology lab, and I asked him, I said, "What are all these little pigs doing in these buckets?" He told me, "Pat, look again." And I did. They were perfectly formed little human babies in those buckets. Their skin was even pinker than a normal baby would be because it had been burned by the saline. Those were the weekend's abortions. We've all been disgusted by hearing about the babies that were murdered during the 3 decades of Kermit Gosnell's terror. He killed the babies born alive in his abortion clinic. Grand jury testimony revealed by the clinic workers that he had killed hundreds of babies in the botched abortions. He would stick scissors in the back of their necks and cut the spinal cord. The initial investigation of Gosnell's practice was not due to the killing of the babies, but they were in there because of illegal drug prescriptions. And that's how they found him. After taking him through many courts and looking at the Gosnell horror and investigating it, he was convicted of 3 murder charges. And we know he murdered more. This does not happen, we pray, here again in North Carolina. But who would have ever thought that abortion on demand would be celebrated by New York legislators high-fiving each other when they passed their barbaric bill? Who would have ever thought that Virginia would hear a bill similar to that and miss passage by 1 vote? Who would ever thought that the governor of Virginia would advocate for infanticide? There's no way to know for sure how often this happens in the United States, because only 6 states are required to report. Reports published in the Philadelphia Inquirer quoted Dr. William Cates. He was the former chief of abortion surveillance services at the CDC. He estimated that there are 400 to 500 of these annually in the United States. He admits it's unlikely to know for sure because the reporting is voluntary. A CDC study analyzing infant deaths from 2003 to 2013 found 143 instances in that time period where babies died after being born alive with failed abortions. A poll taken this month says 77% of voters support legislation to ensure that a baby that survives a failed abortion be given the same medical attention and care. Other polls show almost 80%. 62% of voters across the United States think late-term abortions should be banned. Mr. Speaker, members, this bill is not about pro-life versus pro-choice. It's not about left versus right. It is not about conservatives versus liberal. This bill just does the right and just thing for these special little vulnerable babies, human beings, living and breathing. And they're worthy of this protection in Senate Bill 359.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pitt, Representative Murphy, rise?
Speak on the bill.
The gentleman has the floor to debate the bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard a very passionate discussion by Representative McElrath. This bill is not to debate the legality of abortion. I would venture that I'm probably the only person in this room that's actually delivered a baby. Not sure if that's true or not, but I've delivered many babies in my life. This bill just speaks to the mere fact that if a child is born alive, they are alive, and their life is not to be taken. Regardless of what was the anticipated desire at the beginning of the delivery, regardless, the child is born alive. I took a vow and took an oath to do no harm. And any physician that delivers a baby, nurse practitioner, midwife, is expected to do the same. So here we are, we're talking about life once it has occurred and once a delivery has happened. So I'd ask you to support this bill.
For what purpose does the lady from Mecklenburg, Representative Cunningham, rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ladies recognized to debate the bill.
To speak to the bill. The real story of this bill lies in its penalties, starting on page 2, line 20. Penalties that are unnecessary because infanticide is already illegal in North Carolina and under federal law. The penalties that's in the bill are very necessary if your goal is to discourage physicians and healthcare providers from performing women's health services. This bill has a Class D felony with a fine up to $250,000 if the doctor commits what amounts to as negligence in the bill. If the doctor or the nurse acts with intent, it's potentially a capital crime under our current homicide statute in GS 14 through 17. Our current law, GS 14 through 17, C states, for the purpose of this section, it shall constitute murder where a child is born alive but dies as a result of injuries inflicted prior to the child being born alive. This is the law today in North Carolina. It is also the federal law. An identical bill was heard in Congress, which was opposed by the American Congress of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. The obstetricians and gynecologists called it a gross interference in the practice of medicine. This bill is not grounded in medical science or fact or state law. It warrants that medical providers aren't providing appropriate medical care, compassionate care, and competent care. That we have doctors and nurses in the state of North Carolina that are not practicing medical standards, which are set forth in the North Carolina General Statute 90-14A6, page 53. Boards requires all doctors to act within prevailing medical standards. The implication is that medical professionals are providing unethical and substandard care. I would simply ask you, anyone listening to this debate, who do you trust to act in a difficult medical pregnancy? Do you trust the politicians in this room? Or do you trust the doctors and the nurses who are trained, who are licensed, and who dedicate their professional lives to health care? This bill stigmatizes reproductive health care. We all deserve access to health care based on our medical needs and our doctor's best judgment, not political ideology. Healthcare medical professionals' responsibility is to provide competent, compassionate, and appropriate medical care, and to provide that care with a standard of acceptable medical practice to their patients. I rise in support of women's health. I ask that you reject the idea that healthcare medical professionals in North Carolina are not abiding by the medical standards set by the state of North Carolina law. Thank you.
What purpose does the lady from Buncombe, Representative Fisher, rise?
To debate the bill, Mr. Speaker.
The lady has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. Advocates for this bill, and you've heard them say that we need this bill to prevent infanticide. The House Republican caucus is promoting an online petition that would, quote, ban infanticide in North Carolina. Do any of you really think that infanticide is legal today in North Carolina? If you think that, then why on earth didn't you do something to stop it in the decade that you have had in the supermajority? I think you've heard it once, but it bears repeating. Let's look at what the law in North Carolina is right now. It is a Class D felony under current law to unlawfully cause the death of an unborn child. General Statutes 14-23.1. It is a Class F felony under current law to kill another human being by a culpably negligent act or omission, GS 14-18. It is a Class B2 felony second-degree murder, to kill a child born alive with malice. This is current law in GS 14-17. It is a Class A felony, first-degree murder, to kill a child that is born alive with malice and a specific intent to kill formed after premeditation and deliberation. GS 14-17. If you read the bill summary, it says, under current law, it is murder if a child is born alive but dies as the result of injuries inflicted prior to the child being born alive. That is all current law. How can anyone think infanticide is legal in North Carolina? Why do you think our society would have even allowed this? Common sense and our general statutes say it is not. There is no problem that this bill is addressing. All it is doing is creating confusion and division. All it is doing is adding unnecessary and scary-sounding criminal penalties and lawsuit threats to our general statutes. The only possible reason I can think of for this bill is to intimidate doctors and healthcare providers from doing anything in their practices that is anywhere close to legal abortion services. This bill is unnecessary, and it is a solution in search of a problem. Physicians in North Carolina already follow rigorous licensing requirements, standards of care, and ethical codes when they provide care to pregnant patients. When patients experience complex pregnancies, the real impact of this bill is to discourage health providers from practicing in those cases. And that discouragement is simply another part of the broader attack on women's health. We must vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pitt, Representative Murphy, rise?
may I ask a question of the last speaker?
Does the lady from Buncombe yield to the gentleman from Pitt?
I do not yield at this time, Mr.
She does
Speaker.
not yield. For what purpose does the lady from Yancey, Representative Presnell, rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To speak on the bill.
The lady has the floor to debate the bill.
The Born Alive Infants Protection Act from Congress of 2002. It states the term born alive with respect to a member of the species Homo sapiens means the complete expulsion or extraction from his or her mother of that member at any stage of development, who after such expulsion or extraction breathes or has a beating heart, pulsation of the umbilical cord, or definite movement of voluntary muscles, regardless of whether the umbilical cord has been cut and regardless of whether the expulsion or extraction occurs as a result of natural or induced labor, cesarean section, or induced abortion. I think we've come a long way, and it's in the wrong direction. If this was from 2002, this bill will codify that and keep it so that we won't go that way anymore. Virginia, I think, is what really did it for me when that governor stated the things that he said.
There was a very contentious committee hearing yesterday when Fairfax County Delegate Kathy Tran made her case for lifting restrictions on third trimester abortions as well as other restrictions now in place. And she was pressed by a Republican delegate about whether her bill would permit an abortion even as a woman is essentially dilating, ready to give birth. And she answered that it would permit an abortion at that stage of labor. Do you support her measure and explain her answer?
Yeah, and I wasn't there, Julie, and I certainly can't speak for Delegate Tran, but I would tell you, first thing I would say is this is why decisions such as this should be made by providers, physicians, and the mothers and fathers that are involved. There are, when we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother. So I think this was really blown out of proportion. But again, we want the government not to be involved in these types of decisions. We want the decision to be made by the mothers and their providers. And this is why, Julie, that legislators, most of whom are men, by the way, shouldn't be telling a woman what she should and shouldn't be doing with her body.
And do you think multiple physicians should have to weigh in as is currently required? She's trying to lift that requirement.
Well, I think it's always good to get a second opinion and for at least two providers to be involved in that decision, because these decisions shouldn't be taken lightly. And so, I would certainly support more than one provider.
That spoke to me and said, we've got to do something about this. I'm very pleased that we brought this bill forward, and I ask that you would vote yes. Thank you.
For what purpose does the lady from Surrey, Representative Stevens, rise?
To speak on the bill.
Lady has the floor to debate the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I was going to be, members of the body, I was going to be reluctant to speak, but there's just a few things that were said that I feel like need to be cleared up. To Representative Cunningham, who do we trust? Legislators or the medical professionals? Well, luckily we have both. And Dr. Murphy, who's actually performed deliveries, who knows what a living, breathing baby looks like. When we talked about the murder standards, the murder issues, a lot of those require a premeditated intent, and sometimes that may be hard to show when you're performing some medical procedure. So then in the event that this happens, and it wasn't necessarily an intent, we do have this ability that you didn't provide the standard of care being another basis for this serious injury to the child, to wit, death, which is currently a Class D felony to abuse a child inflicting serious injury. Do we know if infanticide happens in North Carolina? I think we never expected it happened in New York when we found out that an abortion doctor was reaching up and clipping spinal columns open so a baby would die in the birth canal. We never expected such barbaric behavior, and we don't know if it's going on here. But what we did say is you now have a duty to report. Nurses, doctors, whoever sees something like this take place has a duty to report. And that's as an important part of this bill as anything else. So yes, who do I trust? I trust the medical professional. I trust the legislators who are watching and following this and making sure we reach the same standards. This has nothing to do with ladies' reproductive organs. Nothing to do with abortion. This has to do with a living, breathing human being coming out of a body and then being put to death. I ask for your support on the bill.
Further discussion, further debate. For what purpose does the lady from Mecklenburg, Representative Hunt, rise?
Speak on the bill.
Lady has the floor to debate the bill.
Thank you. Members, the people of North Carolina deserve better than this. We are a state with the famous research triangle, where groundbreaking work in medical research is done. And we are here today talking about jailing doctors. We should be working every day for the things our citizens really need. A sound education, access to health care, and good jobs. We do not need radical, extreme laws in our state. Remember one of the last times one was passed? HB 2? Our state lost millions of dollars and everyone suffered. It's time to trust women to make our own health care decisions. The women of North Carolina helped put each of us in office, and the women of North Carolina can take each of us out. I urge us to be better than this and to oppose this bill.
Further discussion, further debate? If not, the question for the House is the passage of Senate Bill 359 on its second reading. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will open the vote.
And we'll see it up there on the tote board in a moment. You can see half of it is obscured by that chandelier, but you'll get an idea. And this one will not be nearly
Representative
bipartisan.
Corbin on the floor.
Holding our breath. Here it comes.
Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 65 having voted in the affirmative and 46 in the negative. Senate Bill 359 passes its second reading and will, without objection, be read a third time.
General Assembly of North Carolina enact.
Further discussion, further debate? If not, the question for the House is the passage of Senate Bill 359 on third reading. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Senate Bill 359, having passed its third reading, is ordered enrolled and sent to the governor by a special message.
I don't know, that no sounded louder to me, but the vote on the tote board was pretty clear. So I don't know. I don't think I need to wrap everything up. In fact, I probably don't hold enough facts in my brain to be able to give you a good summary of what went on. I guess I'm gonna give it a try. No, not a summary, just one or two quick things. The representative, what was her name from? Let me bring that name up there again. Yeah, Pat McElrath from Carteret and Jones County. She's the one that basically introduced it, and she talked about her experience in the 70s with a doctor in Jacksonville that allegedly, according to her, would abort fetuses live with some saline solution and drown them or kill them, as if it happened a lot. And so I put some stories up about him on the video that those of you that are watching the video, you saw. What I did not find is any stories talking about him murdering babies, born alive, attempted abortions that ended up with a live birth that he subsequently killed. She didn't say she saw it. She saw the results of it, but no one reported it. So if there's anything in this bill that doesn't currently exist, I guess it would be the reporting procedures. And I'm not sure what out there in North Carolina law requires someone to report if they see a serious crime like that. I don't know. Maybe nothing. She said she was aware of it. Of course, she didn't report it either back then in the 70s. Nothing between then and now in terms of actual reported activity here in North Carolina. The doctor that they talked about up in New York that would sever the spines of attempted aborted fetuses that were actually born alive, he went to jail for doing that. So, one of the big points was we already have laws that make it illegal to kill a baby that has been born alive. That's a human being. And so the pro-choice lobby would say, we don't need this bill. It's duplicative. And its only purpose is to cast more doubt, more negative feelings on the idea of getting an abortion. And that's why they're bringing this up in North Carolina and many other states, because it doesn't really do anything except make abortions look worse. So Yeah, I don't think I did a good job of summarizing things. But at least I could bring you the debate. And maybe I won't need to soon if North Carolina actually gets to the point of putting our legislature on video. It is only 2019. Okay, I guess that will be it for this episode of the Triangle Talk Show. Glad to get out there and do this. No, I'm not glad to get out there and do those things. I don't want to have to do that. I want to sit here in the studio, in the bonus room, above the I am wearing pants. Shorts. In the bonus room above the garage and have friendly, fun conversations. But once in a while, I'll take the camera out there. And have you seen the camera? You saw a little picture of it. Let me haul it out here. It's nearby. Looks pretty professional. It's tiny compared to the ones the TV stations have, but it's got all the good stuff on it. It's got a couple of wireless receivers for some wireless mics, and all the right connections. Makes pretty good looking pictures. I guess I'm glad to get out there and use it once in a while. It was pretty expensive. All right, that's it for this episode of the Triangle Talk Show. We are at episode 57, Politics, April 17th, covering events of the 15th and 16th at the North Carolina Legislature. The edge case of an edge case, because late-term abortions of themselves are an edge case. They don't happen very much. And a fetus that actually ends up being born alive as a result of an abortion that ends up with a live birth, just about never. Don't need this law. All right, I'm Gary Pierce, your antique activist wannabe. Talk to you later. Over and out.